In this episode, we're going to go beyond the basics of AI and dive into the understanding of large language models and the technical depths of prompt engineering that you can use to guide the behavior of generative AI tools like ChatGPT and Gemini. Hi, welcome back to the ninth episode of the Starlight Podium. I'm Varun, and today we are going to continue our deep dive into prompt engineering. If you joined us in part 1, you have gained a good understanding about what prompt engineering is, who are prompt engineers, and why are they so important to this new evolving world of AI. In this episode, we're going to go even further, exploring topics such as the inner workings of generative AI models like GPT-3 and 4, how they are built, trained, and refined. We're also going to understand the complex process of data curation, which is very relevant in shaping the AI responses. Then, jumping into prompting, we are going to understand some of the advanced prompting techniques that can help us ensure that the outputs that are generated by AI are not just accurate but are also contextually relevant and human like. And lastly, we're going to understand the importance of refinement and reiteration in crafting effective prompts and why it's key to mastering these AI interactions. With us is Sourabh Acharya, a skilled prompt engineer at NVIDIA whose unique journey from creative writing to AI has given him these profound insights and experiences to share with us. Whether you're a seasoned professional or getting started in AI, this episode will equip you with the deeper knowledge to understand LLMs and the art of prompting. Let's dive in and uncover the mechanics behind the magic of AI. And now moving on to the next topic, which is now understanding the more technical aspects of prompt engineering. That is to start with understanding these generative AI models, because I think that is something which is still a black box to many of us. Like generative models like GPT-3, 4, Palm, Gemini, all these are the backbones, right? That for all these generative AI tools like ChatGPT. Now, understanding how these models work can probably help us as well, like as users, to craft those prompts accordingly. So to start with, can you explain like what are these generative AI models like GPT-3 and 4 at a very high level, and what do they do? Like how do they power these apps like ChatGPT?
Okay.
And I think
So,
over here, making it very simple is going to be very important for all listeners, because this is
yeah,
going to be a complex topic. I understand.
yeah. So, GPT, right? Chat GPT, if we start with, right, is a generative model that generates something. Right? Now, generates what? These models create new content, not just what is given to them. These models create new content because they are AI models, artificial intelligence models that use their own intelligence to create data.
Mhm.
So, create new data by learning patterns, by not just learning the data that we give them, but learning the patterns through that data that we are giving them, right? From vast amounts of that we give, from huge data, they understand a few patterns based on their understanding, based on their intelligence, right? Based on which they are made, right? Then, based on that understanding of the patterns, whenever you are seeking something, whenever you seek something from them, whenever you are when you are giving them a prompt, whenever you are asking for a response, when you are seeking an output, uses all that patterns, all that understanding of the patterns based on the data that we have fed, right? Based on the data that we have fed the model to create new content that is coherent and also contextually relevant to what you are seeing. If it does not have answer to that, it will simply say no. If it is not able to understand the pattern of what you are seeking of, or either of what the response should be for that, and if it does not have that understanding of the pattern, it will simply say no, can't answer it, right? Which is again improving by the day because a lot of data is being fed to it. A lot of data is being integrated into these models. So the understanding of the patterns, understanding of the data, understanding of different domains is increasing. So you ask about anything today and they have an answer because that data is fed to it. Right? These generative models, they create new content based on the patterns that are that they have built or that they have understood based on the data that we have fed them in form of text or video or image or audio, any kind of a type, any kind of a different data set, right? That we have done. Again, if we slightly go into the detail, again, it won't be very technical, but getting slightly into detail. GPT, right, stands for generative pre-trained transformer, right? So it itself explains a lot, right? See, generative, as I mentioned, generative is it generates new data. Generates new data, generates new data based on what you've given, right? Pre-trained is where the data that we give comes in, right? It is pre-trained on a data set, right? Pre-trained on a data set because based on which it generates. Now, how does it generate? That comes in the transformer. It transforms the data that it has got, it has received, right? The extensive data that it has received is fine-tuned in the transformer, right? It is transformer is the architecture, is the structure that is used, right, to process, to generate, to reproduce that data, collate that in a form that is relevant to the prompt, right, and give it to the user, right, as an output. This is a high level at which it works. Everything that goes behind is a probably a very deeper understanding, but this is what at a high level these Gen AI models are. Right? All the models use this particular thing. GPT explains it properly because it has it in the name.
Got it. Yeah, makes sense. And just to clarify, like my one question was in the transformer stage, you mentioned like the way these models are going to give us that output, right? The format of that
Yeah.
output is going to actually depend on that transformer stage, right? So
Yeah.
my question was coming from the perspective of, when we get these answers from ChatGPT, like they're very like they have been written in that's this natural language, right? Which seems like a human talking to us itself. I'm pretty sure like the data they get is very raw, but how they are able to transform it into a natural language that entirely is taken care of in the transformer stage itself.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I am not going to go into the details because I have heard like lot of complex terms that are a part of the transformer stage, but that is something for someone who's really interested to go deep
Yeah.
into that stuff. All right. And to follow up, now you mentioned that a whole lot of data has to go into the pre-training, right, of the models. And you, I think at the start also mentioned like we have got image data, audio data, text data that generally are used for training these models. So I'm not going to ask you for specific sources, but generally what are these kind of platforms from where you're able to get so much data that you feed into these models? Because again, you have to then at the end of the day curate it as well, right? So it's a lot of
Yeah.
data
Exactly.
for you to. Mhm.
These models are trained on diverse, right? Very diverse and extensive data, right? That we acquire from various sources. Now, that source can be online, can be from websites, from blogs, from various web pages, from various newsletters, right? From various research papers, from various yellow pages. Can be from them. It can also be from books. Books is also something that becomes very important in today's day and age because not everything that you see online, not everything that you see in a book is available online, especially when it comes to very technical books, very academic, a lot of academic books. There's not a very specific data available in them. So the sources are offline as well as online. We source data from books as well, right? It's especially image data or text data. We source that from books because they can be probably science books, they can be social studies books where you see images of things uh, along with the text relevant to that that may not be exactly same on the internet. Right? It can be in some other form. So whenever you're training the data, when you are training the model based on that data from two different sources, the same data but two different sources, it creates a pattern, right? Just to give an output for that particular data type of data. So we look for data from all of these sources. We use all these sources, right? So based on this training, not just the data, not just the data that the AI model learns, it also learns the patterns, right? The grammar, the facts, right? Also some reasoning abilities, right? At the when you mentioned that it seems like a human is talking to us when we get an output. It is based on the understanding of all those things, the grammar, the facts, and everything that you understand. Also, it also builds a contextual understanding to for the model. Because what happens is when you are using multiple sources, there are multiple different types of languages are used. Multiple different people have written those things. Multiple web pages or websites where multiple people have created it. Right. or multiple blogs where it is written by different types of people. It adds, it builds that, it leads to a pattern that is created, right? That the AI model ends up creating at the end of the day, learning or combining all those styles, or probably creating a new style based on like probably there are four blogs about the same topic. If it is given to them, it is probably a 25% understanding from each, right? Just not in terms of data, but also in terms of language, in terms of diction, in terms of the style, tone, whatever is. So that is something that is that we use the sources to train the model, and the model uses, right, to train itself, or to basically generate an output based on the understanding that sounds very humanized, very human-like, or very conversational, right? At the end.
Yeah, makes sense. All right. I think then moving forward on the same lines, I think a lot of what we spoke about was very closely related to the training and development of these models. And when you were explaining the extension of GPT, it essentially kind of gave you a sense of how the models are trained, right? So
Yeah.
just again, now to just make it a little more structured, could you tell us, like, again at a high level, what are some of these key steps that are involved in training these generative AI models?
Yeah. Uh, See, the first process in every, not just again with the prompt engineering or AI, with everything that requires data, right? Anything that needs data as a foundation. Data collection is the first step in that, right? So here in our cases as well, right? Uh, we collect data, right? That is probably on the web, that is publicly available, that open source data, as well as specialized data that is either from research papers or from individuals, that is not accessible to people in general, right? But that needs to be accessed in terms of the need to create data that is very specific, that is very to the point, and that is very detailed. For that, we need to also access specialized data that is not in open source platforms, that is probably from universities, from the academic libraries, from research papers, from published papers, that is not available to the normal public. We need to do that, right? Starts with web scraping in the initially, right? There are automated tools and scripts that help us collect data from the internet, right? That crawl websites and basically extract text from web pages, end up uh, collecting data from the web pages, right? And there are data partnerships for the ones I mentioned where there are not open source platforms, not open source data. Data partnerships are basically uh, collaborating with organizations or people of the high level that can help us access that data, right? Is very important. Now, at the end of the day, public data sets is something that we can access easily from the offline mode, online mode. We can do that. Academic papers, public domain books. There are a lot of public domain books that are very important to different projects, to the demand of the AI model. That is a requirement. This is all a part of the data collection process. Now, data
Data
processing
collection
becomes
process.
another important. Yeah, data processing becomes another important thing, right? The raw data that is extracted, that is collected from all these papers, is clean, right? Because we are not looking for sensitive data. We're not looking for toxic data. We're not looking for data that involves probably hate speech, right? Hate speech, pornography, all these. Like we are not feeding that to uh, AI models. Because you must have seen as a user of ChatGPT or models, if you ask anything that is offensive, that is part of a hate speech,
Yeah.
that is probably sensitive. ChatGPT refuses, right? Or any AI model refuses to answer because they are trained in a way that they do not have the data. Right? When they don't have the data for it, how will they answer it? So that's the reason we don't do it, right? Now we do a thing that's called tokenization. Tokenization may sound it's like technical term. Tokenization is very break down the data, break down the data into smaller chunks, right? Uh, that the model can process. If you give it too much data at a time, it's also technology at the end that is created by humans. So it won't be able to create or understand the patterns at a, because if you see, even in ChatGPT, if you created a 5,000 word text, right, is not able to understand it. It has a word limit. It has a text limit. You have to feed a certain amount so that it can process it properly, right? That is something that happens behind the scenes. to break it in smaller chunks, feed it relevant in the relevant process according to what it is needed, right? So after tokenization is done, there's a normalization that is also needed. That normalization requires ensuring consistency, right? Consistency, so that the AI model does not get confused while understanding that pattern. To understand the pattern has to be coherent. The pattern has to be consistent, right? So if we humans are behind the process, we need to make sure that the pattern is consistent for the model to understand. So because the model will understand it properly, it will give you an output properly. If there's a confusion, slight confusion understanding the pattern, it may end up giving you an output that you may not be satisfied with, and you will end up struggling uh, with, with the model, right? Or without, right? At the end, training, validation, and testing, that is one process where you train the model, test if your data is working properly, if you're getting the proper outputs based on what you have given, right? Or what you're seeking. If there's some kind of an error, you need to go back, uh, test it again, or probably train it again, validate, test it again, all those things. Uh, Slightly in brief, lastly, the role of prompt engineers becomes very important in this thing. Data curating, as I mentioned, data curating as well. Prompt crafting, you need to craft prompts properly just to make sure that your training is proper, or your training is accurate, so that output is of the best quality. Quality assurance, all these processes, be it the data that is collected, be it data that is curated, that is processed, everything, you need to assure the quality as a prompt engineer in those things, right? So training these models like probably ChatGPT-3, GPT-4, right? Are these collected directly from various sources, processed, right? Quality is taken care by the prompt engineers, so that it is clean, consistent, and no data that is anomalous or that is sensitive or toxic goes to the AI model, because it may end up creating some kind of an error or output discrepancy that we are not seeking. We do not want the AI model to learn, right? Even from the internet. So these things are in the process of basically how things go behind these AI models.
All right. That that really helps. And I just wanted to overlap this thing. So you mentioned in terms of processing, you mentioned about transforming, normalizing as well, cleaning. You mentioned all those points, right? When you were talking about GPT and you mentioned about transformers, like the role of transformers in converting all of this into a natural language, in converting the final output into a natural language that humans can very easily understand. That phase or that part of the training, does that just the AI model training itself after the entire data has been collected and pre-processed? All right.
Yeah. So see, the training, this transformation or the transformer, this particular process, it is basically what I would, in simple words, say designing of the model. That is basically
Oh.
the designing of the model, right? So here what happens is there are multiple hyperparameters. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
hyperparameters end up driving this transformer or driving this architecture, right? So there are a number of layers set in that, number of attention heads, the different size of embeddings, like, based on which, whenever you put any kind of data in, right? Uh, any kind of data in it, it uh, processes it through sequences of processes, sequences of architecture,
Okay.
based on which, if that architecture was not in place, we'll have to probably, if there are 50 different types of responses for a prompt, we'll have to create all those 50 responses ourselves. That architecture is built based on the generative AI model, based on different tools. For example, a ChatGPT-3 will give you a different response for a same prompt that probably a Bard will give, or probably another Gemini, as these models will give, or probably Meta's AI, right? How they'll give.
Mhm.
So it is based on their architecture, built for those tools, built for the AI models that work, built for the models, built for the architecture that these models work, right? These tools work on. So that architecture is based on a different hyperparameter, different layers, different understanding, different requirement based on that. And that is where the optimization of the algorithm, like that particular thing, is also a part of that architecture, right? That ensures that there are no that if there are biases of the models, how will the biases be, or why will the biases be, or how will the biases look like, right? Or if there are models weights, right? If there are something that it needs to prefer while answering, why should it prefer, or which it should prefer, right? Which is the response that it should prefer based on this error, based on the error predictions, based on this pattern understanding, right? Based on this predictions. These models work on these kind of basically architecture. So the transformer part of any model is based on the architecture that it is built on. That architecture is built on various hyperparameters that can be again very technical. Even something if I try and learn about, I may not, because that is something that will be very technical, and probably a software engineer or probably someone who has even have a programming knowledge language may not know, right? Someone who is a developer, or someone who has probably developed similar models, or probably who has worked on similar models, may be able to understand these hyperparameters more accurately based on based on how technically things work when the data is processed through this architecture.
All right. I think that makes perfect sense now. So the way even each of these models give us the output, like the format or the format in which these outputs are generated by these different models is actually based on based on this layer of sequencing, right? Based on how the data
Yeah.
is going to flow and essentially on it be trained by the models. All right. Makes sense. And that is the entire transformer stage. So each model that you're saying, like Gemini, like let's say Gemini, Meta's AI, or GPT, they will have their own separate transformer processes based on
Exactly.
which you get different outputs. All right, lovely. Okay, all right. I think that really helps clear a lot about how these AI models are trained and how we get these outputs. I think this is something that has remained a black box for many of us for a very long time. I think we just knew that data goes in and comes out from ChatGPT, but what happens in between? Now it's it's helpful to understand that entire process. Uh, and now coming to, I think, the part that's going to interest many of us is in terms of prompt engineering, the techniques and best practices to follow. And this is very important for all of us, like people on the job who are trying to use these generative AI tools, to carry out various tasks. Right? Like, for example, if I take my own example as an analyst, I use these ChatGPT tools for creating code snippets, troubleshooting codes, debugging, and like creating or like for doing a lot of tasks. It has really made my life pretty simple compared to few years back. But now, I think still where many people are struggling is how to get it to give you the right or at least a very close to accurate response. And that's where prompt engineering comes in, right? Like if you give it good prompts, it will not give you perfect results, but it will give you close to perfect results. But how do you design those prompts? What are the techniques that we as working professionals can use to design these prompts?
Designing prompts for these generative AI models as a user is what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
There are several techniques, right? There are several techniques that we can use, that are commonly used among people. People who do not understand the AI models, or probably who do not understand technicalities behind it, even they use techniques at times that may become helpful for them, right, in their jobs. So there are most like the most effective, and I'll say the most frequently utilized techniques. I'll talk about them. Right?
Mhm.
Uh, there are different types or different ways to prompt, right? I'll just list down and I'll talk about them in slight detail, and some of them briefly. So the most basic one that everyone uses today, right, while using ChatGPT or any other model, is zero shot prompting. Zero shot prompting that most people use is they simply ask a question to the AI model, right?
Uh-huh.
So zero shot prompting is basically giving a prompt to the model without any example or context to the question. So basically asking ChatGPT what is 2 plus 2 will be zero shot prompting. We're not giving any basically where you do not even need the context. It can be two cases. Either you don't need the context or you're not giving the context. So here you don't need the context. 2 plus 2 will give you a 4, right? So that will use zero shot prompting. You won't need examples to give, right? You won't need probably okay. It's probably if you need an answer like 2 + 2 is equal to 4, or probably you just need an answer 4. These are two different types of responses. Right? A response will say 2 + 2 is equal to 4. One will say simply say 4. So if you need these kind of responses, right? These kind of responses, you will give an example. You will give an example that I would want that what is 2 + 2? Give me an answer. Give me an answer in this format, and in brackets you will put 1 + 1 is equal to 2. So the response it will give you is 2 + 2 is equal to 4. It may end up giving you 2 + 2 is equal to 4 as well. It may end up giving you a 4 as well. Right? But if you are giving it an example, if you are setting a context for it, for the response, it is not based on the result or output that you are looking for. It is the response that you're looking for. If you're looking for a response that says 2 + 2 4, right? You need to make sure that if you want that specific response, you need to make sure that you have to give it an example of what the format you're looking for. It's a very basic one that I for zero shot prompting, let's get back to that. Some useful tasks, right, where this kind of prompting can be used, right, is something where the model's understanding is enough to answer the question. So if a 2 + 2, you don't need a context, right? If it
Correct.
is trained on basic math data, if it is trained on how to add, right, if that formula, if that is in the algorithm, it will give you a 4. It does not require you to give additional context, additional data, right? So zero shot prompting helps in those cases. Although zero shot
See,
prompting may not be helpful in most of the cases. In most of the cases, you either need to get into more detail or type other types of prompting, as we'll talk about it. The next one is one shot prompting. That is slightly more detailed compared to zero shot prompting. In one shot prompting, you either give an example, right? Or set a context for the AI model based on the desired output that you are seeking. Right? So that way, the model will be able to understand the expected format or style, right, that you are looking for. Right? For example, if you are looking for an essay, right, and ChatGPT for you to write an essay for you, and you want it to sound humanized, you want it to sound very human-like or something that may you have written, you can feed it an essay that you have written in the past that is not generated by an AI model. You may have written somewhere, right, on your own about a topic. Just feed it that, even if it is grammatically incorrect at points. It does not matter. To feed that to ChatGPT, ask ChatGPT to write an essay on a topic, right? And use the tone, style, right? And the language, right? And the language structure of the essay that you have fed it, right? So you will tell ChatGPT that this is an example. This is an example of the essay that I have written. And I want you to write an essay based on the tone, language, style of this particular essay and create an essay based on this understanding on this particular topic of these many words. Right? So when you have fed it that, ChatGPT will try from its understanding of the pattern. ChatGPT will try to create something that is as close as possible to your tone and style. So that is where one shot prompting helps you. Again, one shot prompting is something that will give you a desired output, may not give you a desired output at time, right? It completely depends on what your requirement is. If it is very specific, if it is an essay like this, essays can be subjective. Even if it may not replicate your tone and style properly, it may still end up sounding like it has something that you have written. Right? But there will be still be instances where it may sound like it is AI generated. Right? Now comes the few shot prompting. Right? Few shot prompting can be 2 shot, 3 shot. It can be multiple different layers to it, multiple different types of. Right? This model is given a few examples of what you are seeing, right? Along with the prompt, right? So this way, what happens is you are reverse engineering the tool, right? Now you are working as a prompting. You're feeding it multiple types of data so that it learns the pattern, not from what the already from the understanding that it already has, but also from the data you have given it. So if you are given 5 examples, if you and you ask to learn the pattern from these 5 output and then create a similar output for you, that way your few shot prompting will help you. And I think few shot prompting at the end of the day is something that is used by most people, right, who are looking to get unique output, unique results, right? Especially in academics, especially in a lot of in marketing, right? The people do these things where they use different marketing copies, right? Very effective marketing copies and take the help from ChatGPT to create similar marketing copies. But yeah, that may not sound similar, but have a different, have a same same engagement or build the same kind of curiosity among the audience, right? Then there are a few other I'll talk about those in very brief, right? The chain of thought prompting, right? Chain of thought prompting
Yeah.
is something that right, that is something that becomes important to know or to learn for people, right? For working professionals of today, because this will be very helpful in their working process. Right? This involves prompting the model, right, to generate intermediate steps or reasoning before arriving to the final answer, right? Uh, so what happens is when you are just take an example of the same essay that we were trying to write about. So here, if we ask the model to create the essay, it will just simply create an essay. If you'll ask based on the sample that you've given, based on the example that you've given, to create an outline for the essay, right? Or probably create a structure for the essay. It will create a structure for the essay. And based on that structure, if you feel there are pointers or headings or subheadings that you do not want in the essay, you want something else based on what you need, because it will give you an idea of what is it that will be included. So you ask ChatGPT to include something else, right? Something else to replace something and add something there. Then you will ask to create an essay based on that structure. That is the final structure. That will probably be a more useful output for you, right? From what based on what you are seeking. Probably the first one would be more generalized, can be sound plagiarized, can sound similar to what some other person has created using the same model, right, for the same topic. But if you are using these processes, if you are if you're using building a chain of thought for the for the model, it may end up creating a very unique essay for you, or very unique data for you, or very unique content, right? That may not be similar to anyone, because now you have built the outline yourself with the help of ChatGPT. You've helped ChatGPT to build out based on your human understanding. Right? That where the chain of thought prompting works. Now, instruction-based prompting is another one, right? Where explicit instructions or how the model should respond, just providing a specific format, basically, right? Or focusing on particular aspects of the task idea. For an example, in this essay, right? If you ask the ask the model to be more engaging. You read the essay that is given. You say you feel okay, it is not as much engaging. Right? You say okay, make it more engaging for me, right? Or rewrite it, making the text or making the essay or this part of the essay more engaging. If it is not more detailed, if there are not more stats, more numbers, not you. You can simply ask the model to do that, right? That is very instruction based prompting. It can be again a part of the chain of thought prompting, right? Where multiple steps, multiple prompts are involved. So instruction-based prompting can be that as well, right? So we are until there's clear guidance, it won't be considered instruction-based prompting, and probably that is where you will miss out on getting the most desired or the perfect output that you're looking for, right? Then next one, I think it's contextual. Yes, contextual prompting is something, right? That is where along with the context, you also add the background information related to the prompt, right? For an example, right? If you are talking about a particular scenario, right? Some kind of a protest, if you want to get right for that, right? So until and unless you provided the context of why the rally was there, right? And the output won't be sufficient. It won't sound complete, right? So you will need to give some kind of historical data, some kind of historical reference, just to make sure that your contextual prompting or the context that you're setting for that kind of a response that you're seeking is ideal, right? And the last one is interactive prompting. So interactive prompting is interactive prompting is where this entire conversational part of the prompt engineering works, right? Or the prompting works, right? Which is basically you created a chat on any of the models. You and interactive prompting is kind of a compilation of all the other types of prompting. Here, you use all the other types of prompting to create a thread of conversation with the AI model, right? And the responses that you get is also, and the responses also the prompt that you give based on the previous responses that the model had. So basically, there's an understanding. The model's memory keeps updating. The interaction becomes more engaging, right? Or probably there's a response that you felt is relevant to what you're seeking. So you'll use the response in your next few of your prompts or few of your responses later, right? There will be a very dynamic interaction, and this will probably give you the best output out of all the ones we have done, right? And yeah, so basically, and yeah, there's one more thing that was that I missed to add in the um, chain of thought, sorry, not chain of thought prompting, but instruction based prompting. Instruction based prompting, there, the persona, right? Building the persona or creating a persona for the ChatGPT, asking it to create a persona. That is where the instruction when you give it, right, and it builds up in the as an interactive prompt, as an interactive prompting the entire process. There, when you ask ChatGPT to add or to behave, right, or to probably to extract information as someone, right, as someone probably having expertise or something, as probably a marketing manager, or probably a software engineer, probably a maths teacher, a maths tutor, right? And you ask that, it can be possibly that your responses that you get will be more humanized, will be more human-like, and will be more contextual as well as interactive when you ask it to build a persona, right? So building a persona, that instructs that kind of that part of the instruction based prompting helps a lot with the patterns that AI models have developed recently in these models. Like in the older models, when the first time when ChatGPT came, this thing was not very useful. This thing may have created a few confusions. A model was not able to respond properly, but now the models respond very, very nicely to these kind of instruction-based prompts. So these are the different kinds of prompts techniques that you can use, right, to prompt properly, right. We may get into examples later, but for now, this is a brief. And to learn more about the examples, there are various examples on the internet. We can simply go and look for that particular term, probably interactive prompting, few shot prompting, or chain of thought, and we can get multiple examples for how or formats, how we can craft our prompts, how we can uh, make sure that our prompts are enough or sufficient for the output that we are seeking.
Wow. So I think now that gives me a good idea of what kind of prompting I was using, because I think I've heard many of these terms, but we are not able to distinguish between, what is one shot, two shot, and zero shot. Now, like knowing these kind of prompting techniques, like it really helps to use the correct one based on the scenario that we're working in.
Yeah.
And I think you covered a lot with respect to some of the questions I had within within these explanations itself. Like in terms of, you mentioned about instruction based prompting where you can give personas. I think that is one very good strategy to get the desired output, right? If you want output in a specific manner, or with you want these models to have the context, take up the context of some expert and answer, like instruction based prompting comes in very useful over there. The one final question I have with respect to this topic is, these are the multiple prompting techniques we have. But now, when you are, irrespective of which technique you follow, when you are actually creating these prompts, right? Like, what are some of the qualities that the user should ensure that the prompt has, which will ensure that the output they get is close enough to what they're expecting and then easy to reiterate?
Yeah. Okay. So from again my experience using AI models as a user, from my experience
Mm-hmm.
training these AI models as a prompt engineer, there are multiple things that you can use, multiple probably qualities that you need to have in your prompts to get the best output, the best desired output. Right? Clarity is where you can be as straightforward, as unambiguous, as clear as possible, as specific as possible when you are giving a prompt. Right. So it should not be like how you used to probably search in Google, and Google used to give some responses which were not even probably relevant to what your demand or what your requirement was. So clarity here means is something, if you are asking a question, right, and if something and anything that you add extra to that prompt should be something that should be building up or leading up to that question, right? Anything that is irrelevant to the question or to the prompt that you are seeking or to the response that you're seeking should not be a part of your prompt at all, because it creates a confusion. The model does not is not able to distinguish between what is that you're seeking. Is it the first thing that is the part of the prompt, or is the second thing that is a part of the prompt? You know, as a human, that the second thing is what you're looking for, but it get confused. So clarity is one thing. Precision, or being precise, being specific, is something that is again important. Being more relevant or accurate about whatever we are seeking. Now, contextual relevance is one thing. That is a quality that you can use to get good responses, right? So basically adding sufficient context to whatever you are seeking. right? It can be in the form of examples, it can be in the form of formats, it can be form of any other source or any other data that can be used, right, to amplify the data or to improve the quality of the data or quality of the output that you're seeking, right? So contextual relevance or adding context is one thing, right? Having an instructional quality in your prompts is another thing. It should also, it should never or it should not always be very, not sound demanding, like a lot of times it should not be a lot of times it should not be a question mostly. It should not be something that, it should not always sound like you're seeking something. Make it sound like you are instructing, make it sound like you are asking for help, make it sound like you're always uh, looking for a support, right? Either you are trying, or the best way is to make it sound like you are trying to help the model give a better response, right? So that the instructional quality is something that you build while writing prompts, right? Probably in the chain of thought prompting, that instructional quality is seen mostly, right? Where you keep asking it to do certain things for you, right? We're not simply asking questions and looking for responses. We're giving it instructions, specific instructions on what it needs to do, right? So that is where the from the all the data that it has, all the patterns that it has understood, it will give you the very specific chunk of what you're looking for, because you've given a very specific instruction of what you're seeking out of all that huge data set. What is that one thing that you're seeking, right? Right. So building that kind of instructional prompting or designing that kind of instructional prompting, right? Or giving a certain format or certain requirement that you have in terms of prompting will give you a better response, right? Similarly, completeness, right, and consistency, these things go hand in hand, right? uh, Consistency is, again, as I mentioned, in terms of language, in terms of tone, style, right? If you, so in the first question, in the first prompt, if you sound very formal, right, and the next one you are like, what's up, chat gpt, like that will confuse chat gpt, right? That will, because the memory keeps
Mm.
updating, is what as I mentioned, right? So
Correct. Yeah.
if you have a consistent tone and style in your prompting techniques, right, in your designing your prompts while looking for a response, right, about a certain query or a certain prompt, if there's a consistency in terms of your requirement, if 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 you are asking something and if that is building up to an interactive prompting, and eventually is going to lead up to your uh, output, right? For example, let's take the example of the essay again. If you have asked the model to give you an outline for the essay, and then in the next pointer ask it to use that outline to create the essay for some other topic, but that same outline, it will confuse,
Mm.
because eventually you're just leading up to that essay, right? Because your prompt said that create an outline for me for the essay that you will create for me later, because you will write for me later, right? In the next response, or in the next prompt that I give you, on the next instruction that I give you. So it confuses. So that consistency, right, is required. Similarly, completeness in your prompts, completeness in your queries is another thing that's needed. If you're asking a question, add as many details in one prompt as possible, right? Initially, right? If you get a response and you feel okay, you're unsatisfied, you need a few more things, add it later, right? In the next few responses, because that will be your interactive prompting working there, right? But when you're giving your first prompt at all, right, the very first prompt, write everything that you need from the essay. You want it to be engaging, mention it there. You want this particular thing to be mentioned, write it there. You want research papers to be referenced there, to be referred there, or you want some kind of writing style, right? Writing style that needs to follow some kind of a referencing style, some kind of a research paper style writing that needs to follow. Just mention that, like API style or whatever those styles are. You mention that in your first prompt itself, so that it goes close to what you're seeking. Now you can interact with it more and keep refining your prompts, keep refining your responses, right? We have to avoid any kind of ambiguity. That was again part of being clear, right? Examples and templates, as many as we can use from the internet, from what we have done already, from any kind of a similar output data or similar kind of an output where it was published somewhere. If you want to use those templates, it is always best. Use examples, give it to ChatGPT and ask ChatGPT to behave accordingly or to create accordingly based on the style or based on the format that a particular example uses, right? And always be relevant to the task, right? Relevant to the task. Anything you're writing as a prompt, anything that you're writing as a prompt should be and should be relevant to your output that you're seeking. Anything extra that you write will end up in the chat in the model's memory and will end up creating an ambiguity, creating a confusion, and your output may slightly become of lesser quality, right? Or may slightly become less important or less perfect, right, of what you're seeking, right? And as you go on prompting, just make sure that you're learning with the responses. That if ChatGPT is telling you something, that if it's telling you that this is something that if by the end of an essay, if it tells you that if there's anything else you want me to add, just tell me. So if there's a reason ChatGPT asks you that, because when ChatGPT does not feel that it is 100% correct, right? When ChatGPT does not feel that it has given you a proper response. So just make sure that you have a habit of going through responses, understanding how the model is behaving, and then probably refining your prompts, refining your requirements, or refining your next few interactions, next few prompts, designing next few prompts based on what is extra, what is something that is missing, or if there's something that is extra, added as an extra, and you want that to be eliminated. So you should not trust the AI models entirely, because it can be a situation or a condition where probably a mistake from your end, right, or probably an ambiguity that is being created from your end may end up giving a slightly different response, because of which you can't completely rely on the AI model. So always believe in your instincts as well. Go through the responses, go through the prompts again, keep refining it, right? Keep understanding, keep learning. Again, that is also a dynamic process. AI, everything related to AI, as a user, as a creator, as a developer, everything is dynamic. You need to be on your toes in every little thing that you do, right? So these are the few, I think, qualities that a good prompt will need, right, for you to get a proper output.
All right. And one point I want to focus on is, now we have understood the techniques, we have also understood qualities. One point you were like continuously emphasizing on was refining the prompt. I think because that becomes important as like in your first attempt area, irrespective of how good a prompt you give, it is quite possible that in your first attempt it will not give you the answer you're seeking, or it will give you something close, but that's not exactly what you were
Yeah.
looking for. So,
Yeah.
and like this is where people's confidence in AI comes into picture, right? In the first prompt, if you don't get the output you're expecting, many people will be like, "Arey, then this is not for me. Like I'm not able to prompt it properly," and they'll just like stop using it. So, for when you are actually prompting or when you're using Chat GPT, like how important is that reiteration or refinement process? Like after your first prompt, like how important it is to continue like trying to refine it or ask it to improve on its answer to get close to your expected output.
Okay. See, in this, when we talk about refining the prompts, when we talk about
Yeah.
learning where the mistake is happening and where the refinement or where the improvement can be done, right? We are emphasizing on specificity, right? We are emphasizing on being precise. We are emphasizing on being or getting close, right? Not just asking ChatGPT to learn something, but you also learning from it, right? It is not just as a probably a language professional or a content professional. It is for any professional or for any individual, right? Because uh, you don't always consider an interaction or a prompting process with ChatGPT or any other model as a process where only you are seeking something out of it, right? Where you are seeking an output. Always consider it to be a learning process. Always consider it to be a session with ChatGPT, a learning session where it is probably teaching you something, right? So what it is teaching you is to be that one step ahead, right? So when you have that kind of a vision, where you had that kind of an aim, where you are looking to be a step ahead, where you are trying to learn, where you are trying to probably understand how this thing does not just only work giving an output, but also how does it work behind the scenes, right? Probably you start thinking like a prompt engineer when you work on it. That is when
Mm.
when you are refining your prompts, right? When you are refining your prompts, you're trying multiple things, because even if you end up creating a wrong prompt, the worst case scenario is you'll get a probably an ambiguous response or a wrong response, incorrect response. That is the worst case scenario, right? ChatGPT won't say that it won't answer you from the next attempt, right? If you
Mhm.
give it a wrong prompt, right? It will simply give you a wrong response. You have and still have an opportunity to try all over it again, like to go through the process all over it again. Like you can just do that, right? And can try. So refining, what we mean by refining is just trying different things with ChatGPT. It is always an additional bonus if you can go through a few resources where you can understand prompting better before you do it. And it is better if you don't go through the guidelines and it's understand things based on your understanding, spending time with these because it is always best. Probably is something that I may have missed for something that you can add to your profile is, if you are trying to become a prompt engineer, spend as much time as possible with these tools, right? Try with
All
any
right.
query, do with anything, have as much interaction with it, try as many different types of different styles of prompting, different data, different examples, different formats as you can, to understand how this model is behaving, right? So when you understand how this model is behaving, that is when you as a writer or you as a prompter will be able to refine your prompt, right? Where you'll drive the behavior, where you will drive the behavior of the model, and not the driver is asking you to probably change your prompt based on that. Your prompt will change the type of response, right? So refinement is not just based on you knowing how to write or knowing how to prompt, but you understanding from the model behavior of what it is requiring you to do, so that when you do it later, you won't need to again shift your understanding or shift your style based on what the model is requiring, but you shift the model's understanding based on what you are prompting. The
All right.
persuasive
Good.
prompting, that persuasive refinement will help both the processes, for the model as well as for you, to give the best output, to get the best output.
All right. That definitely makes sense. So I mean, refinement is refinement, experimentation. This is a
Yes,
very,
absolutely,
very important task when you're using these generative AI tools, right? Because you're not going to get a perfect output within the first go itself. If you get,
absolutely.
fantastic. Otherwise, you have to keep trying out different techniques. And I think that's where some of these techniques that you have mentioned, right, and the qualities you mentioned, that is something like users can try out. If one does not work, just try out another and see if it works out better. Yeah, so I think this was as good as a course, I can say. Like, you have literally explained prompt engineering as well as helped us understand like how to prompt, what the techniques, qualities. You have literally given that entire layout. So this literally feels like a mini course to me, which 100% sure people are going to find very useful. So I think that wraps up most of our important topics for today. And I would like to uh, get your thoughts on. We have spoken so much about prompt engineering, so much about AI, right? And you have also repeatedly at the start you mentioned that it is here to stay. So,
Yeah.
what do you think is the future of prompt engineering?
uh, See, future of prompt engineering is a very promising first thing, and what it promises is both a dynamic future as well as a
Mhm.
transformative future, right?
All right.
Because it is not just uh, an opportunity that helps people who are into this as a career, but it will also help, and it is also helping people who are nowhere related to AI, who are not even related to generative AI, who are not even related to machine learning. They are from completely different domains, but this prompt engineering, right, just as a career, it is helping people. So as I mentioned, it is here to stay, right? And as it is here to stay, it won't just stay, it will evolve, right? It will advance, the technologies will advance, the needs will advance, right? The requirement by different industries will advance it. And also, as we saw initially when these models came in, there were a lot of ambiguities, a lot of confusions, a lot of different a lot of vague future, right, that was there, because people were scared, right? A lot of people were concerned about their jobs, a lot of people were concerned if these models are safe, will there be probably toxic data there, or will it affect people's lives or stuff like that, right? Now when these models are becoming more increasingly sophisticated, right, where uh, the prompts are evolving, the responses are evolving to probably address and solve more complex problems, right? More complex or more nuanced interactions that happen over time, right? So I think because of this, the development of these automated tools, right, the streamlining the processes of designing or testing or refining these prompts, right, these things are getting better, right? So these things will this field, the field of prompt engineering, the field of prompting in general, the field of AI generative models, it won't be limited to just prompt engineering, and I'm very sure about it. There are multiple branches, multiple verticals, multiple fields, right, where it can be used, and that will eventually end up creating more opportunities, more jobs, more roles. Prompt engineering is just the beginning, is what I'll say. It is just the beginning.
Love.
We've just touched the surface. Just the touch the surface is just the tip of the iceberg, right? There's a lot under the there's a lot under the sea, right? There are multiple applications across domains, or probably multiple considerations in terms of different organizations that may end up helping, right? And it will help. And it won't just be of help. It will play a very critical role in driving the operations, driving the administrations, driving the processes in all these organizations, right? And as we as prompt engineers are doing our best to minimize any biases, minimize any probably AI difficulties or AI vagueness or ambiguities, right? We are trying our best to build the best models for today's use, for future usage, right? And ensuring safety of users, right? So that they are not, so that they don't end up accessing data that is probably toxic, or that should not be available to the public forum, right? And so this collaboration between humans and AI, right, as it keeps deepening, right, as it deepens, as it becomes more strengthened, more strong, right, or stronger. Uh, I think we will see a day. We will see a day when it will be a prerequisite for every job to know some bit of prompting or some bit of generative AI, some bit of knowledge about AI, right? Be it even if it is not slightly related to the job. So I think that is the future of prompt engineering right now. And I, as a prompt engineer, feel extremely safe with my career opportunities, because I see a lot of it coming right now. And as we keep learning, as we keep on evolving based on our understanding of what we do every day, of what we go about learning every day through projects, right? There can't be a day where the opportunities will exhaust for us, because if we learn a new thing every day, and probably that ends up when new things come up, when new roles, new opportunities come up, like someone who has probably taken a first mover advantage in the AI field, or in the AI careers, will get some kind of a help, because it has been the case with at least almost everything in the world, right? The first movers always get some kind of an advantage when they go ahead, right? So I'll also suggest, if someone is looking for to go into prompt engineering, they should simply start today, right? Start the moment they see this, right? They should start working on building some kind of a foundation where they can find some kind of a knowledge or some kind of understanding of how AI works, and can build a career, or build a look, or basically grab on the opportunities that are coming their way in the AI and machine learning fields.
So essentially, to summarize, it is just here to stay. I mean, I understood. I think from a career standpoint, there is a whole lot that's going to come. Given the way AI is developing, prompt engineering is going to become a very lucrative opportunity down the road.
Yeah.
And for other working professionals like us, definitely AI. I definitely feel AI is going to become a prerequisite skill, as you mentioned, very soon, because we've already seen like how these tools are getting used on the job, like for in roles such as analytics, programming, creative writing. So definitely, it's going to be a huge part of our future going forward. And uh, for all of us who are who are very interested in learning prompt engineering, like as even as you are, like you try to keep yourself up to date, right, with prompt engineering and try to keep learning more. Like, are there any platforms or resources which you have found helpful to learn about prompt engineering, which you can recommend to us?
See, there are not a lot of like very open source or public details when it comes to, like as you mentioned, there was still a lot of ambiguity when it came to understanding prompt engineering as a career. A lot of details are not there on the public platform. So there are courses, right? Multiple courses. Udemy has a few courses. Coursera has a few courses. There are multiple individuals on the writing blogs about AI. Although we as prompt engineers, because we have got into the profession, we have got into the behind the scenes of this, so we learn a lot through the projects. But for someone who is looking to build, right, there are multiple videos on YouTube, right, where you can understand. See, what understanding the basics is enough is what I'd say. Understanding the basics is enough
All right.
for you to start, because everything that comes up later is understood via experience, right? There are multiple online
All
courses
right.
you can go for, and as I mentioned, any course that teaches the basic of AI and machine learning will be good for you to start, right? There are multiple books,
All right.
right? There's a book by Susanna Hammond, I think. Susanna Hammond, the AI book, right? It talks a lot about AI. May not really talk about generative AI and LLM, but talks a lot about AI. So you'll have a good understanding of how artificial intelligence works, right? Because that is a very, very critical requirement of understanding how large language models or natural language processing works, understanding AI, right? That is one book that I would suggest people can read. Then there are multiple speech and language learning books that they can prefer, right? It does not have to be one specific, it can be multiple, because that will help you better your writing skills. Because writing skills are
Hmm.
eventually important as a prompt engineer. You will need writing
Yeah.
skills no matter what, right? So you need to learn speech, understanding natural language processing, or just language processing in the first place, right? So I don't remember the writer's name, but the book, I think it is called Speech and Language Processing, right? That I came across a book. I haven't read it fully, but what all I have read it is a really good book, right? That one. You can also look for research papers and journals. There are a lot on the public platform. There are online communities and forums. And on Reddit, in fact, on Reddit there's a machine learning subreddit that I follow. A very really engaging interactions there, right? So machine learning, it is machine learning. The name of the subreddit is machine learning. You can learn a lot about machine learning there, right? There's also one subreddit called language technology. There's also one thing that you can follow. Language technology is one subreddit. These subreddits will help you because they will have very good engaging interactions. People are there are very they are very passionate about language processing and AI. And then there are blogs and websites, also a lot of LinkedIn creators who talk about prompt engineering, right? Who write about prompting, right? There are a lot of LinkedIn influencers as well who you can follow, right, who give out data, who give out information about how to prompt better. That will again help you as a user as well as if you're trying to build a career, right? Then workshops and all these code repositories, these are again all available in the public platform. You can simply
Yeah.
go look for it whenever that happens, and try and be as dynamic as possible. Keep engaging or keep attending these kind of sessions. Like for example, the session that we are having, this has been enlightening, not just for you, for me as well, because again, we I when I talk about I feel the importance, right, of how things are moving or how things are working. So again, it helps me understand the importance of it as well, or how dynamic it has to be, or probably why I need to go and look for if there's a news about AI right after this session ends, right? So this is something that we all learn. So that is
Hmm.
something, and networking should not never end. Networking is something that you need to do irrespective of what your career is. Be whichever platform you're on, even if you're on Facebook, just try and look for people with similar interests. It does not need to be prompt engineers, it does not need to be people interested about prompting. It can be people just simply interested about AI or simply interested about technology. Just keep networking, learn something from everyone around you who has a probably similar interest, or even if not, right? So uh, that's my probably response to this resources and tools. But yeah, there are other things as well that I mentioned here.
Yeah, makes sense. I think I have learned a lot from LinkedIn creators. I have learned so much from LinkedIn creators about some of these qualities, and like I've heard about these prompting techniques. On these social media platforms, you can get a lot of information if you just follow it on a regular basis. So, yeah, apart from courses, workshops, just stay active and engage with such content creators, and you can at least stay up to date. I think this has been a mind blowing session for me. And I'm hoping this will be a mind-blowing session for anyone who is interested in this topic or who wants to upskill or consider this as a career path going forward. I cannot thank you enough, Saurabh, for sharing so much information, for spending so much time. Before we part and conclude this session, are there any golden words or final thoughts you want to share with anyone, especially those people who want to consider prompt engineering as a career path going forward?
Yeah. See, I'll sum it up in very few words. Uh, what it's specific. It can be specific to people looking to build a career as prompt engineer. Everyone else, every new college graduate, or every person who is not even a college graduate looking to build a career, who's starting today, right? Who is still in their graduation, who's still in their school probably, right? And starting to look to build something, right? Start collaborating, learning today. Be adaptable, open, keep your eyes open, keep your eyes and ears open. Don't close it. Don't never think that you know everything, because you probably know just 1% of anything that you even feel you are an expert of, because there is still a lot to see in this world, still a lot to explore, right?
Yeah.
And always make sure that you're building a portfolio, because a portfolio is not built in a day. Portfolio,
Yeah.
just like Rome was not built in a day, even your portfolio won't be built in a day. You will need years and years of projects, years of working, years of experience, and you keep building your portfolio. Because if tomorrow, if someone comes up who probably with an opportunity that aligns with your goals, and you don't have anything to show, right? Because the job market works on what you can show or what you can deliver, right?
Correct.
So your
Yes.
skills will matter only if you have something to show for it. So always keep building your portfolio, be it a prompt engineer, be it any other career, right? Develop relevant skills, develop relevant skills, and especially for prompt engineers, master prompt design as a user. Spend your time with models, with AI models, text generative AI models or visual models as much as you can, right? Right? There are a lot of free models out there. You don't need to spend money doing it. You just need to spend some time, and the time is precious, not just for you, but for people who are creating the data for to help you understand things, not just help you get help, right? Not just help you get output, but also to help you understand how things work. So spend your time with it, and you will end up at a really good place, in a really good organization, in a really good role, right, in the years to come, because this thing is going to stay. Not just prompt engineering, there will be more opportunities. So if you are updated, if you're adaptable, if you're dynamic, and if you are someone who is curious about things, you will end up being in possibly a place you have not expected now. Yeah, so that will be my words and suggestions for everyone looking to build a career, right? Just to build a career.
Beautiful. Yep. I think that's a brilliant way to wrap it up. Very important, like very important message you have shared with everyone. So that brings us to the end of the session. Thank you very, very, very much, Saurabh. Thank you very much for listening to part 2 of the ninth episode from the Starlight Podium. If you'd like to share your feedback, thoughts, or any ideas for topics that you would want me to explore on this podcast, please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. That's all from this wonderful episode from the Starlight Podium. Until next time, stay informed, stay inspired, and keep on exploring new frontiers in the world of data. Thank you.